Kristine, remember when you were a kid and you thought that your career was going to be this like perfect straight line trajectory?
Oh my, yes. That is not at all what happened. It ended up being way more of a squiggle than I could have ever imagined. And I am so happy that I embraced all of the squiggles along the way.
Hey, Kristine, how's it going?
Oh, it's going amazing. How are you doing?
Good. So we are at episode 100. Who would have thought?
I can't believe it. 100 episodes.
So exciting. So
What a ride.
thanks for tuning in today, folks. But today is going to be different. It's just Kristine and I. And we have some thoughts that we want to start chatting with you about 100 episodes of Embrace the Squiggle. All right. So I feel like there are some themes that go through so many of our podcasts. And a few that come up for me regularly are people making sure that they know what's really important to them in a career and that they trust their gut. Right? Which I think both of those kind of go hand in hand. And so I want to talk a little bit today about what happens when we do and we don't kind of follow our values or trust our guts, and maybe tell a little bit of our own stories as opposed to us hearing everybody else's. So I don't know. Do you want to go first and tell a story of a time you did or did not trust your gut, or want me to jump in? Because I have one that I know I could talk about. But if you have one, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, you go first. I have a million.
I know, right? Right? So many. Okay.
So many.
So at one point, I was in a job that was fantastic. And then I got a new boss, right? Which I feel like is the story of my career and most people's career, right? Right? You're doing a job, you love it, everything's great, and you get a new boss. So I get this new boss, and they want to completely change how the departments run. They weren't happy with it. I was a senior director and realized, okay, this just wasn't going to work for me. So I started applying to new jobs. And I get desperate pretty quickly because this new boss, one of the things they were requiring of everybody who reported to her was that we stopped in their office when we got there first thing in the morning, and that we stopped in their office before we left every day. So she knew when we were coming and going within the office.
Wow.
Right? So, I mean, talk about zero trust. So that started happening, and I was like, oh, this is going to be bad, right? I know it's going to get worse. And so I started applying for jobs, and other things are going on in my life at the time. I'm in the middle of getting divorced. I'm trying to sell the house I had with my ex. I'm trying to buy my own house, right? Like it's all those things. So I get a job interview. It goes really well. Go in for a second interview. It goes well. Then they offer me the job. And when they say they're offering me the job, I said, I haven't met the person I'm going to report to yet.
Red flag. Right.
And they said, well, yeah, they're out on bereavement because they had someone in their family die, but we want to offer you the job anyway. And I said, I'd love to talk to them before I accept. And they said, we can't wait that long. They're going to be out for another week, and we really need to get this job in. And so I said yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew this story.
Yeah.
That's juicy.
Right? And there was something about it that my gut was like, ugh, this isn't good. But I also needed to get out of where I was, right? Like, when you're just, everything is like in chaos, and you're like, maybe a job change is what's going to fix it. And I show up on day one, and within 15 minutes of meeting with this person, I was like, oh.
Not the right fit.
This is not going to go well. And it didn't, right? It was my shortest job that I had in my entire adult life. I tried to get out as quickly as I could. I was there about 18 months or so, which for me was, again, shortest adult job that I had. Yeah. And, I should have listened to my gut there, right? And looking back on it, it's one of those pieces of advice that I give people all the time, right? Never, ever, ever take a job unless you've sat down and really met with the person that you're going to be reporting to, because that manager, They're going to impact every minute of your job.
Yeah, and taking the time to reflect. Reflection is also another sort of theme that comes up a lot, I think, in our conversations. But taking that time to reflect on your array of leaders, of everybody that you've reported into, what are their values? What are their communication styles? What are their leadership qualities? And remember, what was that profile that you thrived under? And what was the profile where you had challenges or, became stagnant or, whatever it is? It's so important. And I find that in a lot of my conversations over the last however many years, people don't know that piece of job search.
Right? They don't know
That piece,
who they should report to.
or who they're looking for out there in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story. And what I heard in there in terms of the trust the gut piece is that your gut was talking to you, and you did push back a little bit, which I love, and sort of held that boundary, and then you were like, shh.
Right. And I think also it was,
And how many times we've done that?
yes, and also because other chaos going on in my life, I remember thinking, okay, this change is going to make things feel better, when that's not actually the change that needs to happen. It reminds me of the story of when I used to do the career change weekends when I worked for Smith College.
Yes.
And I had an alum who came to one of them. And after day one, it was a 2.5-day retreat. And after day one, she came to me and said, I'm going to go home. And I thought, oh God, yeah, what did I do? Is it that bad? And she said, no, I realized I don't need a new job. I need to divorce my husband. Right. And I think it was that same kind of moment where it's like so many other things were feeling out of control and not feeling good, that it's like you just make that jump to kind of get out of the frying pan and realize you just jumped into the fire.
Well, and how many times in those moments, I mean, that's a perfect example of what's really being reflected back at you.
Right.
Yeah. It's never about the toothpaste and the lid being left off the toothpaste.
Yes. I definitely was embracing squiggles at the moment. I was like, let's squiggle in every way, shape, or form. But I wasn't.
Except for what we really need to be doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I trust my gut. Oh my gosh, Colleen, I don't even know what story to choose, to be perfectly honest. I remember as a child being highly intuitive and almost like predicting stuff, but I didn't know how to be with. It wasn't really predicting, it was intuition. And not really understanding how to be with that piece of me. And I know for me, I shut it off. I became totally disconnected, and then, definitely made some decisions along the way. One being my marriage. The ring got presented to me, and I remember thinking, oh God, I'm trapped now. I have to say yes. Meanwhile, my gut was screaming this isn't the right move for you, sister.
So let's pause here. And anybody who ever has that gut moment when somebody presents you with
a
diamond ring, you can say no.
You can say no, people. Absolutely. If your intuition is telling you that this isn't the right next step for you, oh, absolutely. Stop and pause. And yet, I had to go down that pathway because it did bring us to 100 episodes of Embrace the Squiggle, many years later. And I have lots of stories in my career too. And you know what? I'm actually going to take a bit of a different angle here. There have been moments where I have listened to my intuition. And I have found the courage to make a change in my career. And what was really interesting was the reaction that I received, because I was listening to my intuition in terms of it is time to leave and it is time to pivot in a new direction. And I did do that at one point in my career. And it was really interesting, the rudeness that was flipped back at me by direct supervisor. So there's that too, in terms of knowing how. Now, did I have the strength and the tools in my toolbox like I have today to hold space for myself and not let that toxicity seep into my space? Not sure I did to the degree that I can today. And I know that my leaving a job was challenged in where it should never have been challenged. So I guess, I'm sharing that piece, that sort of angle, because when somebody trusts their intuition and makes the decision that is right for them, sorry, Mel Robbins, I'm stealing your line today. Let them.
Yes.
They know what's best for them in that stage of life or next step in their career. And don't hold them back. Let them go.
And I think sometimes people are making those comments or yucking your yum, or whatever that piece is, right at that moment, out of jealousy, out of fear, because they would never be up for making that choice, right? That they're knocking something because they would never have been willing to do that they feel stuck. And, I think of the, 90 plus people that we've had on this podcast at this point, and the conversations we've had, and how many of them have said things like, okay, my parents, my spouse, my friends didn't think this was the right move, but I knew it was, and I did it anyway. Or
it takes a lot of courage to do that.
It does. And that risk averse piece, I always say I am highly risk averse, and which is what kept me from starting my own business for a decade. Right now that I do this, I'm like, I totally should have done this 10 years earlier. Right? What was I thinking that this was going to be impossible? Right? And I was almost going to say hard when I was going to say that. And I'm like, because it is hard. It's not the easiest thing to be an entrepreneur. But when you set it up in a way that makes sense for you, if you enjoy it, this is so much better. This is what I need. And when people say, gosh, I could never do what you do, I remember saying that to other people, to say, gosh, I could never go out on my own. I'd be, terrified. I'd be worried about my next paycheck. I'd be worried about health insurance. And now that I do it, do I still worry? Yes, because it's who I am. But I worry a lot less, and I'm a lot happier doing it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that we shouldn't be doing it the same as someone else. I've spent many kilometers on my bike recently, and I've noticed in moments my storytelling and the narrative that is not helpful, and reminding myself that that my business is going to look different than everybody else's. And right now, I'm focused on a piece because it is what is coming through the door. And I've actually paused on chasing more. And it's given me space to focus on catching up on a few things behind the scenes and really think about, what do I want 2026 to look like? And when we start to compare, or we hold ourselves back, or we think that my business needs to be a carbon copy of your business, that's where we stop listening to our intuition and we become disconnected.
And it is hard. There are definitely hard times where you're thinking, is my gut actually telling me the right thing to do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
it's scary, or it's different, or it may not be the thing that you think you want or that you think you need at that point. And that whole balance piece, I would say the majority of our guests have struggled with that at some point, where they kind of made,
all of us.
where you're trying to make that decision. You're trying to decide, is this the time to squiggle? I think of Loretta, who was on recently, right? The teacher who...
She's such a gem.
Such a gem. And right here she was, a teacher who decided to leave teaching, and she left mid-year. And for anybody who's a teacher, they would tell you that that's the thing that's so hard about teaching, is you feel like you can only leave at certain points in the year because you'd be letting your kids down, right? It's not the administration that you care about. You care about the kids in your room. And for her to make that decision was so hard. But I watch her videos on TikTok, and you see how physically she is a different person, right? She looks so much healthier and better and happier. And, being able to make those decisions for yourself when they're hard.
Well, and listening to the inner wisdom, it's not always about, is this the right decision? It's also about listening to what isn't right for us. Bless you.
Thanks. As I'm I'm muting to sneeze as I'm getting over a cold.
Yes.
Right. But
Yes.
right.
It's also what's not right.
Mm-hmm.
What needs to be, what is time, what do we need to let go of? Is it time to let go of this? And, so it's not just, is this the right decision? Is this the right decision? What's not working for me? What doesn't bring me inner calmness or peace? What feels forced versus in flow? And, our intuition feeds all of that.
And for folks who aren't big change people, right? It's kind of why we ended up with Embrace the Squiggle and not Embrace Change, because so many people hear the word change and think it's like they hit that panic mode.
They don't have a good relationship with that word.
But on the other hand, the one I go back to all the time for folks is, are you still wearing the same jeans that you wore when you were 16? Right? We outgrow things, and maybe we outgrow them and we get bigger or smaller, or right, our bodies change or styles change. And I'm glad I'm not wearing the acid wash turquoise jeans that I wore back when I was 16. Gosh. I don't even know that I have a picture of myself in them, but boy, were they hideous. And thinking, that's not what I would want to wear today. So why would I expect all the other things to be the same, right? Why would I expect decisions that I made 10 years ago or what's going to fit me today? And getting people to really open up to that idea that this is okay if things are different.
It's okay. It's different. It's okay to change. It's okay to pivot. I'm still surprised how many people are in jobs for 10, 15,
their whole career,
20 years. I'm actually and I've received a few clients where, they're up around that 10, 12, 15 years. And I'm like, oh God, sister.
And I've seen people,
we need to shake things up, but it's surprising that people stay so long.
And I've seen people stay at a company where they have moved around, right? Where they've moved up or different. But I've also worked with people who've gotten so niche that it's really hard for them to figure out what could be next, because they've they've done a job, right? They've moved up or moved over, moved around, or wherever they've moved within this company. And now they do a job where they are like an N of one, right? They're the only person who does this. I think of a few years ago, I worked with somebody who their job, they worked for a company that made very specific scientific instruments for some very specific research. And their job was to explain how the kind of instruments worked to the marketing team.
Okay.
So their whole job was kind of almost they're in between the researchers and the developers and the marketing communications people. And they've gotten themselves in such a niche, right? Like their company made some really very tiny specific things that they couldn't even see themselves doing anything else because they'd been doing this their whole career. Right? This is the only place they'd ever worked. And, you know, they were in their 50s. So they had been in this job for 30 plus years or at that company.
Well, and that just triggered for me the reminder that you, I say in air quotes, the collective you, hold the power of your career. And you get to decide whether or not you want to pivot into very niche positions or not. You know, just because the company has that need doesn't mean that you need to accept that role or interview for it or whatever the internal process is. And so again, you know, making sure that you hold on to the decisions that are being made about your career. And if that's a direction that the company wants you to go and it's not in alignment with the direction you want to take your career, there's an invitation to stop and pause and spend some time reflecting on what makes sense in this chapter. And is it time to maybe look externally for the next step, whatever that might be?
All right, so I'm going to bring us down a similar path, but I think at this moment in time, we're still seeing a lot of people get laid off. We're still seeing people struggling with what to do next. I'm seeing people who have been at companies for a really long time and having positions eliminated. I think you and I were talking when we were talking about AI of having somebody in marketing, right, being fearful.
Yes.
Right. I'm watching the marketing industry, at least here in the US. Every marketing team I know is laying half their team off because everyone's thinking, oh, right, we don't need as many people anymore. We can do this faster.
Right.
And so as folks are out there reinventing themselves, right, they're thinking about maybe the first time ever that they are squiggling. What are some of your kind of top questions that you're asking your clients, right? You get on a call with somebody. What are some of the things that you're asking them in that first call or maybe the second call, right? You've done some sort of intake to know their background, but what are some of the things you're asking them? Like what questions do you ask people to really reflect on as they're starting to think of what's next?
Well, number one, the leadership. Number two, if it's appropriate, I highly recommend that they buy our journal.
Yes, has lots of good questions in there to contemplate.
There's lots of reflective questions in there, absolutely, and I can't wait for journal 2. Actually, I have been writing number 2, Colleen. I don't know if you've peaked or not lately.
Very exciting.
But it's in production. Anyways, it's questions that I'm asking. Okay. So what jumps to mind, because I actually do have a couple of I'll call them what's next clients. One in particular was really interesting, a little bit younger in her career. And what was really interesting is she brought forward societal expectations, is what I'm going to label it as. Okay. And she was talking about people leadership. And so I was listening and then I just dropped under what she was saying. And I said to her, do you feel that you need to move into people leadership in order to have a successful career? She said yes. Like, she didn't really hesitate. She was like, yes. I was like, oh, no. So that's a question that I've actually started to ask clients, is writing out your own definition of what success is. What does a successful career look like? What does it feel like?
I love the feel piece. And I'll add, when that with that people leadership, I straight up ask people in that, in probably in our second session, do you like managing people? Right? Do you like leading people? Not everybody does. And unfortunately, at most companies, for you to move up at most companies, you do end up having to lead people, right? When folks want a certain salary level or title, often that comes with having direct reports. Some companies out there are getting better at trying to figure out what are some career pathways for folks who don't want to lead people, because not everybody is good at this. Yes, you can learn, right? I think it's the Confident Manager series that I run, right? It's all like, yes, there is training. You can learn to be a better leader, but some people, they just don't like other humans enough to want to lead other people, right? And that's okay. And in that same part, if you don't want to lead other people, then you have to think of what your career path might look like. Because like I said, unfortunately, at most companies, you have to be a people leader to move up the ranks.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah. And that's your invitation to start looking externally. A lot of the questions that I ask are very simple, to be perfectly honest with you, Colleen. Honing in on strengths. That topic has been weaved into, probably not, I don't know, 90 of our episodes, but really revisiting the strengths piece, knowing, again, what motivates you, energy tracking. A lot of these questions I know are very similar to what you asked. What moments of the day do you feel most energized? What drains your energy? Energy management has been a hot topic in my coaching.
Yes.
How many people don't know how to manage their own energy? And that's just been game changing for a handful of people that I'm working with right now. So energy management.
I will say in that, right, in the energy management world, somebody I was coaching recently, we were talking about how when they get home that they are just so drained, right? Wife, 2 kids. And he is like, I get home and my wife is always like, why do you just need to sit for an hour, right? I need you to help when you get in the house, right? They both work full time, and he's really struggling. And we started to talk about, could he flip his days? Could he start looking at these things that drain us? Often we keep putting them off, right? You look at your list and you're like, oh, what's the thing I like to do? And you do that first. Like, how about you keep the things that energize you to the end of the day, and you start doing those things that maybe drain you in the middle of the day or at the beginning of the day, and have that energizing thing happen before you leave. So when you leave work, you're not showing up for the rest of your life.
Your reserves are full.
Completely sucked dry. So.
No, I love that. What values? Oh my gosh. That's a non-negotiable question, reflective question to ask around values, what's in alignment, what's not. The other piece too is really knowing where my client is in terms of the chapter of life that they're living, and perhaps have values shifted, changed, that type of thing. I'm really big on getting people eventually to write their own job description, and really having that blank canvas, magic wand. If there was nothing that could stand in your way, hold you back, type of thing. But what would that role and responsibility look like if you could get up on Monday morning and go to work? What is that real dream job?
It's one of my favorite exercises. And I find when I first ask people to do it, they tend to write a job description that already exists. right? Like they're going to be a this, and it sounds very much like something that exists. And I always push
Yeah.
them to say, no, wait, I want this to be a job that doesn't exist. There's no chance of this job ever happening. So write it. And I've
Right.
had a few people who've been able to take that, unicorn job and propose it to a boss and have them say yes to it. And they're shocked when this happens,
I know.
right?
So the question that I get when I walk, somebody says, "How would you walk?" I need to change my job, and we're maybe not even engaged as coachee yet, and I walk somebody through the method to my madness. When I talk about writing like literally giving them permission to write their own job description, I have been met, I would bet you hundreds of times with, "I can do that."
And,
Yes. Yes, you can.
your boss might say no. You might write a job description and they're like, yeah, no, I can't do this, right? But more often than not, if you're a good employee, places want you to stay. And so if you are a good employee and you are able to bring something to the table that's going to increase productivity, increase profitability, right? You can show that you're going to help them meet their goals in a new way, and you have this idea. Quite often, places are going to say, okay, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me to another question, which is actually connected to what you were just describing, and that's around really knowing what business problem number one lights you up that you love to solve, and you've got the skills and experience to solve, because that's why companies, if I flip the table here for a minute, that's why companies are hiring. They have a specific business problem that needs to be solved, and it's up to you to know what business problems that you solve, so that when you're exploring and having conversations, it's like, oh, that's not me. Can I refer you someone? And then you cross that one off your list. And then you move on to the next company. Tell me about your biggest challenges. Oh, wait a minute. And internally, companies are always changing and evolving, and problems are being solved. And then there's the next new challenge. And so even if you pitch a job description and it comes back with a no, there's also like maybe it's one or two things that you can shift to like add some life back in and invigorate your current role by taking on a project, or
Joining a committee
shifting,
or, right?
joining,
Yeah, whatever it
whatever it
is.
might be. I mean, there's a million different things that can happen, but knowing that you have permission. It's just a conversation.
Right.
And like you said, the worst thing they can say is no, and you move on to the next
Right.
thing.
That answer of what problem do you want to solve, or what problem can you
Yes.
solve? What problem do you solve? Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game changer. I watch people do this, career advisors who I know who work at colleges and starting to work with
Right.
students who have no idea what they want to do in the world. They start to ask them, right, what problems do you see in the world that you want to solve? And let's figure out a way that you could do that. Right. But getting people on that mindset of what problem do you solve? Well, whether you're an entrepreneur, as I mentioned before, like I have a pitch competition this afternoon, and one of the things we're getting, I was going to say graded. I'm still too much in college mindset, right? We're getting ranked on is what is the problem that we solve, and can we communicate how we solve it? And if you can do that as an entrepreneur, as a employee, as a manager, as a leader, you're always going to have a job. You will always have a job if you're the one who can go in and say, I see this problem you have, and here's how I'm going to solve it.
And in the world of AI right now, this couldn't be a more important time to really, whether you are squiggling or not, to really hone in on that piece of your career and looking at your role and reflecting, what are the business problems that I'm solving on a daily or weekly basis? Because you can stay ahead of the game. Should you be in one of these pockets that are being quite impacted by the world of AI. And even if your company isn't maybe as far down the pathway as, say, another organization that not that you've mentioned companies, but the ones that are actually at layoff stage, they've obviously were early adopters. You can now look at, okay, what should I be doing to prepare myself? Should I find myself in a similar situation? Is you can be doing things to pivot or squiggle or become the AI expert. You can be doing things off the side of your desk. You can be doing courses, whatever that looks like. So, the biggest piece of advice I could give in this conversation about career management is to be proactive, not reactive.
Yes. Don't sit around and wait, right? Don't sit around.
Don't wait for it to happen.
Always be upskilling, always be figuring out what the next thing is, the next problem is that you want to solve. Always be connecting with folks. I have a cold because I was at 2 conferences last week, right? Yeah. One that I was speaking at and one that I attended. Right. Out of my own pocket, right? Paid my own way, went there because I knew I was going to get
Open
the connections and have conversations that could lead to the next thing. And sometimes I don't even know what the next thing is.
Oh, you don't need to know what the next thing is. That's the thing, is that one conversation could actually open the door to your next thing. And, I just want to add to, and this has been a theme through the last 100. Well, you've just named one, the networking, connecting, whatever word lands for you. The other piece too is reflecting on who you're surrounded by. We've talked about that many times throughout 100 episodes, is who is sitting at my table. I know you and I I think we both use board of directors. But who is that inner layer of community? Are they lifting you up? Are they dragging you down? Where are their gaps? Who has expired? Where do you need to refresh? And that has become a staple in my life. I've talked about this on a few podcast episodes where I will declutter humans. I declutter humans. If you're not leaving me joyous, if you're not challenging me to be a better me, so to speak,
or you're sucking my energy dry,
right? We're done. We are no longer. But I've actually, again, many kilometers recently, I've looked at my community. I've looked at who's sitting at my table, and are the right people sitting at that table. I had to make a little change. I made a little change. I set some boundaries. But for the most part, I'm surrounded by the right people. And, but that's also key. Who is going to help you get to the next place? And it is okay that people come to an end, so to speak, whether it be that you outgrow, or they're just not the right people to support you into this next chapter, or support your crazy dreams, or whatever it might be. So yeah, people, places, and things, my friend, they're all important.
100%. So as usual, this has been so much fun, Kristine. Every time we do an Us episode, I think we need to do more Us episodes.
I know.
Right?
This is where they get so much of us. What are we, 50 something years of career and leadership experience?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
More than that at this point. We're probably,
Probably. I know we do. Maybe that'll be our 2026. We'll look to add a few more Colleen and Kristine episodes. We got to shake things up with Embrace the Squiggle too.
We will be. So stay tuned for 2026. And if you have a really cool squiggly career, if you've made some really cool changes in your life and career, reach out. Let us know. We are now accepting applicants for guests for 2026. If you go to embracethesquiggle.com, you can see where the application is, or just ping us on any of our social media.
And we can guarantee your quote of wisdom will be published in our journal.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Kristine. As usual, this has been a blast.
Thanks, Colleen.
Is it time for you to add a little squiggle to your career? Join us every week to hear from another guest talk about how they embrace the squiggle.
Subscribe now and find your inspiration.